Like, you saying you doing this and doing that in your music, then y'all gotta be really doing that shit. That's what Boosie want. And Pooh Shiesty, he gave it to him. You understand? He's saying he feel like the only rapper got more bodies than him on some shot calling shit, because ain't no way he talking about actually doing it.
Boosie's name is back in federal territory, and the hip-hop community is still trying to make sense of the fallout. What makes this whole thing sting different is the fact that the person who put him there wasn't an enemy. It was somebody he brought up himself. While Pooh Shiesty was busy flooding his social media with comeback energy fresh out of prison, he was out here referencing body counts loud enough for everyone to hear. And that forced Boosie's hand in a way nobody had ever seen before. The real story underneath all of this is darker than what most people were expecting. What we're about to break down is how one careless caption may have just reignited federal interest in a man who worked incredibly hard to stay out of their crosshairs. We're pulling back the curtain on some street politics that cut deep through the hip-hop world and may have permanently damaged one of the most solid bonds the industry has witnessed in recent memory. And before anybody starts jumping ahead, let's lay the foundation properly. Ever since Pooh Shiesty surfaced online after his release and put up a post essentially placing himself in a very short list of rappers with serious body counts, with Boosie being the only name above him, the internet has not settled down. Fresh out of a federal bid, this Memphis native hit Instagram looking like life was everything. New jewelry, new grill, full confidence. And somewhere in between all of that, he typed out a caption that detonated across the entire rap landscape. Before anyone writes this off as standard tough talk from a rapper, consider the position Boosie was actually in. The man had just survived an incredibly serious federal case and managed to walk out of the courtroom with probation. That alone was remarkable. So when his own artist turned around and voluntarily connected his name to the exact type of language prosecutors love to use as ammunition, the situation became something much more serious than a social media moment. Sources on the ground have been weighing in heavily, and the consensus seems split between people who think Pooh Shiesty just made the worst mistake of his career and those who believe the whole thing was a calculated move to create distance between him and Boosie. Regardless of the motive, both of these men are now dealing with consequences neither of them can walk back easily. The caption itself was straightforward. He came out and said there was maybe one rapper walking this earth with a higher body count than his, and that man was Boosie. Anyone with real street knowledge understands that putting those words on a public platform is not something you do carelessly, and it becomes 10 times more reckless when you've literally just stepped away from federal prosecution. The expectation for Pooh Shiesty coming home was that he'd move quietly, rebuild his brand strategically, and let his music do the talking. This was the opposite of that. The moment you start attaching body count conversations to real names in the rap game, you've crossed out of entertainment and walked straight into the kind of territory that ends careers and opens investigations. Memphis reacted almost instantly, and the streets weren't showing Pooh Shiesty any grace. People out there were making it clear they didn't take his words as a confession of personal action. The real interpretation was that his reach went further than his hands. The narrative coming out of Memphis painted him as someone who funded violence rather than participated in it directly. And that distinction didn't exactly soften the response. If anything, people came at him even harder for it. But strip all the Memphis politics away, and the core issue here is still Boosie, a man who endured one of the most publicized and legally complex situations any rapper in this generation has gone through. Back in 2009, he was looking at first-degree murder charges stacked on top of conspiracy charges, the kind of case where walking free feels like a miracle. The prosecution built everything around his alleged involvement in a string of homicides connected to his associate, Marlo Mike.
Grand jury has indicted Torrance Hatch, otherwise known as Lil Boosie.
Let's take a real close look at the Marlo Mike situation specifically, because without understanding that history, there's no way to fully grasp why what Pooh Shiesty posted carried the kind of weight that it did. Marlo Mike was reportedly a teenager, only 15 years old, who prosecutors accused Boosie of using as a paid killer to handle multiple murders on his behalf. The government's argument was that Boosie would put a price on someone's head and Marlo Mike would be the one to go out and collect. The entire case rested on the idea that Boosie was sitting at the top, giving orders and financing hits on various people across Baton Rouge, including Terry Boyd, among others. At some point, Marlo Mike flipped and started working with the government, telling authorities that Boosie had paid him to take out at least 9 people across a 2-year window. Prosecutors used all of that to frame Boosie as the architect of an ongoing murder-for-hire operation with multiple victims and a years-long timeline. Here's where the story shifts, though. Boosie beat it. After grinding through years of legal battles, standing firm on his innocence, and letting his attorney systematically dismantle the prosecution's foundation, he walked away from what could have been a life sentence. The jury never reached a guilty verdict on the first-degree murder charges, and the case eventually resolved with him pleading to reduce charges and receiving time served alongside probation. Around that same time, voices from the street were making a point that the only people who can really speak with authority over someone who calls shots are the ones who actually do the work themselves. The argument being made was that when it comes to actually stepping to someone, there's no comparison to be drawn. Two things exist in entirely different categories. For anyone who doesn't fully understand what it means to beat the federal government in court, here's the reality of it. Federal prosecutors win roughly 95% of the cases they take to trial. They don't walk into a courtroom unless they believe their evidence is airtight and their witnesses are solid. The fact that Boosie came out on the other side of those charges says a lot about either the strength of his legal defense or the significant weaknesses that existed in what the government actually had on him. The Marlo Mike case was essentially a blueprint for how federal prosecutors try to construct murder-for-hire arguments. The theory was that Boosie would identify who needed to be dealt with, put up the money for weapons and logistics, and Marlo Mike would handle the actual execution of the plan. And this wasn't supposed to be a one-time thing. The government claimed it happened repeatedly with alleged payments, reportedly ranging anywhere from a few $1,000s up to around $10,000 per job. The defense came in and systematically broke down why that narrative didn't hold up. They argued the evidence was largely circumstantial, that the people testifying had serious credibility problems, and that the government simply could not place Boosie's direct hand in any specific killing beyond a reasonable doubt. The case began crumbling once witnesses started contradicting themselves on the stand, and the defense started exposing the timeline inconsistencies and the holes in the physical evidence the government was relying on. What people keep missing about this whole Pooh Shiesty situation is that the streets and the courtroom are two completely different arenas, and he just played street chess on a federal board. This wasn't just a caption. This was potentially a case file getting reopened. Investigators don't need a confession. All they need is a direction, and Pooh Shiesty just handed them a compass. One analyst put it straight. Any detective sitting behind a desk in Memphis who saw that post was already reaching for their phone to call their informants before the post even finished loading. The mission becomes simple at that point. Find the unsolved cases, connect them to Chopper Gang, and start building. That's not speculation. That's how the machine runs. And that's the trap nobody warns young artists about until it's already too late. The authenticity that makes fans go crazy at shows and stream records millions of times, that same energy is what keeps a federal file with your name on it active and growing. Pooh Shiesty wasn't just bragging online. He was potentially drawing a map and posting it publicly for anyone with a badge to study. People in Memphis started breaking it down from a street analysis perspective almost immediately. The point being made was that law enforcement doesn't even need to directly cite what someone posts online. Content creators and street commentators do the legwork of assembling the narrative publicly, and investigators come behind them using it as a guide to locate real evidence on their own terms. By the time it reaches a courtroom, it looks like independent police work, but the thread that led them there started with a caption on somebody's Instagram page. Digital posts that may never touch a trial can still walk detectives straight to witnesses, locations, and relationships they had no previous visibility into. Here's something a lot of people outside the system don't understand about how federal cases actually get put together. It's never about one moment. Prosecutors don't build cases around single incidents. They construct conspiracy narratives that pull years of activity into one story. Phone records, lyrics, social media, surveillance, witness statements. Everything gets layered together until a picture forms. The moment Pooh Shiesty dropped Boosie's name inside a body count discussion, he essentially reminded the government about a case they couldn't fully close. Boosie walking away from those charges doesn't mean investigators shredded the file. New witnesses, new information, new angles. Any of that can bring certain aspects back to life. Street analysts pushed the conversation even further and raised something important that most people glossed over. The real ones who can hold someone accountable for talking heavy aren't other rappers. It's the homicide unit. Because if someone is genuinely applying that kind of pressure in real life, their name is already cycling through detective briefings on a regular basis. That comes with the territory. So when an artist makes public claims about body counts, what they're really doing is confirming for law enforcement that they're worth watching more closely. And everyone in that post, every name that got mentioned, just inherited a piece of that same scrutiny. Memphis showed up and was not gentle with their response. People from Pooh Shiesty's own city were poking holes in the whole thing, and the comparison they kept bringing up involved Julio Fulio and Young and Ace. The argument being made was that anyone who's actually listened to their music knows the references in those songs go far deeper than anything Pooh Shiesty was claiming. Pulling Boosie's name to the top of that list while ignoring what those two have put on record didn't hold up under any real examination. That comparison also exposed two dangerous legal paths running simultaneously. If Pooh Shiesty was exaggerating or completely fabricating his involvement in violence, that opens the door to false statement and fraud exposure. If he was being truthful, then he just publicly documented serious felonies with zero legal protection around them. There's no third option. Both roads are bad, and both create problems that don't just affect him. They affect every name connected to the conversation. For those who need the cultural context broken down. When street culture references bodies or hats, the conversation is about participation in homicides. That's the highest credibility currency in certain circles, but it also happens to be the most legally toxic thing you can voluntarily attach to your own name in a public forum. Artists living in that space are constantly walking a wire between staying authentic and self-destructing. And the commentary around this situation made something else clear too. Real respect from real people in real life hits different than any online following ever could. 1 million followers is visual. Actual street weight is physical. You feel the difference. The problem is, the internet doesn't care about that distinction. What gets posted online becomes permanent documented evidence. Federal cases aren't built on street reputation. They're built on digital trails, intercepted communications, and recorded statements that prosecutors can present to a jury in black and white. When Boosie reportedly came across that post, his response was immediate and unambiguous. He made it clear he wanted no part of that conversation. Not in any form, not for any reason. And honestly, that reaction makes complete sense once you understand where he's standing. This is a man who just survived federal charges that genuinely threatened to keep him locked away for the rest of his life. He fought through all of that and came out with probation. The last place he needed his name to show up was inside a social media post about unsolved homicides put there by someone he personally invested in. Boosie didn't build that relationship with Pooh Shiesty overnight. He poured real mentorship into that young artist and helped shape the trajectory of his career. That's what made this land so much heavier than a typical rap situation. Because for Pooh Shiesty to put that caption up, it means either he genuinely didn't think about what those words could cause Boosie legally, or he thought about it and moved forward anyway. Neither explanation makes the relationship easier to salvage. Analysts speaking on the broader dynamics pointed out that when artists work together, the people around them sometimes create exposure through careless moments rather than direct confrontation. And then the internet amplifies that exposure until the damage spreads further than anyone intended. Stack the timing on top of all of it, and the picture gets worse. Pooh Shiesty had just walked out of federal prison. His entire priority should have been staying clean, building his catalog back up, and giving investigators zero reasons to look his direction. What he actually did was give homicide detectives in both Memphis and Louisiana a potential reason to pull out cold case files and start looking for new threads to follow. This situation was never really about who had the most credibility. Strip everything back, and it comes down to one thing: words have consequences. And those consequences multiply when federal history, unsolved cases, and active investigations are already sitting in the background. The rap trap is documented at this point. We've watched it play out too many times. The energy that fills arenas and pushes streams is the same energy federal prosecutors build exhibits around. There is no artistic defense in a federal courtroom. People who have been watching this cycle repeat itself for years were direct about it. The price of being an authentic street rapper is that you have to stand on every single word you put out every time you leave your house. The music is what generates the income. But what rides alongside that income is the obligation to back up everything you said, and that obligation follows you everywhere, permanently. That's the suffocating corner so many artists get backed into. The narratives that resonate most deeply with their fan base are the exact same narratives that prosecutors want to read back into a microphone inside a federal courtroom. What Boosie did in response to all of this reflects the kind of understanding that only comes from actually surviving the federal system. Certain conversations don't belong in public spaces. It doesn't matter what they might add to your reputation. His move wasn't about taking a personal shot at Pooh Shiesty. It was about protecting what he nearly lost everything to keep. People close to the situation were clear about what Boosie actually accomplished legally. The government came after him wanting real prison time, and he walked out with probation. That doesn't happen without an exceptional legal fight and serious holes in the prosecution's case. For his own artist to then voluntarily reattach his name to conversations about unsolved murders after all of that isn't just disrespectful. It's a direct threat to his continued freedom. Whether Pooh Shiesty genuinely learns something from this moment or keeps moving in a direction that puts everything at risk remains to be seen. Hip-hop has buried too many careers that belong to talented artists who couldn't draw a clear enough line between their stage identity and their actual legal reality. For anyone younger watching this unfold right now, this is the lesson. Federal law enforcement, homicide units, and prosecutors are all consuming the same social media content as everyone else. They are not entertainment viewers. They are building documentation. The trust between Boosie and Pooh Shiesty took years to establish and may have cracked beyond repair in a single post. Both in street culture and in business, once someone puts your freedom on the line for the sake of online attention, what existed before that moment is almost impossible to fully restore. None of this was necessary. Pooh Shiesty already had his audience. His music was already speaking for him. He had nothing to prove that required spelling out alleged criminal activity for the entire internet to screenshot and share. The credibility already existed without the caption. What this moment really reflects about the culture goes far beyond two artists disagreeing. The people claiming to be the most dedicated fans, the ones at every show, buying merch, streaming every drop, those same people will use your own words against you without hesitation the moment it benefits them. That's the era we're in. Artists are constantly being pulled between the authenticity their audience demands and the protection their legal situation requires.